Hello, I'm Zainab Badawi. Welcome to Johannesburg for what promises to be a lively debate on an increasingly controversial topic. Along with our studio audience, we're joined on our panel by Ugandan MP David Bahati from the country's ruling party. He's the main force behind a proposed anti-homosexuality bill that in some cases would see homosexuals imprisoned for life. Festus Mogae, president of Botswana for 10 years until 2008, he now backs decriminalisation of gay people, but is criticised for not doing more when he was in power. Paula Akugizibwe, an African thinker, public health activist and poet from Rwanda, who's lived and worked right across the continent. Siddiqa Tunde-Lawal is a leader of the Ansarudeen Youth Association of Nigeria, a Muslim group with branches across the length and breadth of Nigeria. Eusebius McKaiser, a writer on gay issues, a talk show host and a philosophy lecturer based at the Centre for Ethics at Wits University here in Johannesburg. That is our panel. Along with our invited audience of gay rights activists are religious groups opposed to homosexuality. Welcome to you all. Now, before we start our discussions on homosexuality in Africa, let us just set the scene for you. The BBC's Kevin Wachiro has this overview. By the way, some viewers may find some of the images in this report disturbing.
Gay pride on the streets of Durban. South Africa has gone further than any other country in the world by enshrining gay rights in its constitution. But this legal protection doesn't always guarantee that people enjoy these rights in practice. This is Millicent Gaika. In May last year, she became the latest lesbian in South Africa's poor black townships to be subjected to a brutal sexual attack. Like many other lesbians, she underwent an ordeal known as corrective rape, carried out by gangs of youth who claim they intend converting their victims to heterosexuality. These attacks take place despite South Africa's laws aimed at protecting gay people. In 13 other African countries, homosexuality is also permitted by law. But in the remaining 38 African nations, being gay is a crime. In 3, it is punishable by the death penalty. Nowhere is the debate more polarized than here in Uganda.
It is a sin. You can't have sex with another man. This is really contrary to God.
I'm also against homosexuality because it's totally against our culture. Life imprisonment. It's a fair what? It's a fair punishment.
Where do these attitudes come from? One place is the church. Pastor Martin Semper preaches to students at Makerere University in Kampala.
The standard is a man is to marry what? A woman, and the two shall become one. Therefore, if you have others, such as a man with another man, you have fallen short of the standard. A man with an animal, a donkey, a goat, you have fallen short of the... Jesus laid the standard.
Last year, a Ugandan newspaper published the names and photographs of 100 alleged homosexuals and called for them to be hanged. The newspaper's editor, Giles Muhame, claims that homosexuals in Uganda recruit young people, encouraging them to be gay. It's this practice which he says justifies the death penalty.
In my view, I also support this man. They should be hanged.
You'd like to see homosexuals?
Yes, and the hanging should be public.
The newspaper's publication of the identity of alleged homosexuals coincided with a new anti-gay bill introduced into Uganda's parliament by lawmaker David Bahati. It calls for life imprisonment for homosexuals and the death penalty for aggravated or repeated cases. If his bill were to become law, all Ugandans would be required to report homosexuals to the authorities. Similar anti-gay initiatives continue to be discussed in other African countries. Sylvia Tamale has conducted research into the history of same-sex relationships in Africa. She rejects the view that homosexuality is un-African.
Gay people have always lived among communities. Everyone, in the village would know that so-and-so, sleeps with another man. But they were not vilified. They were not praised. but they were not vilified. That's my point. So all these anti-gay sentiments came from outside.
Najib is a gay Ugandan man who lives in the slum of Bwaise in Kampala. He runs a support group for young gay men and women in his area. He believes that Uganda's lawmakers have their priorities wrong.
We are gays because we are made to be gays. It's what we feel. The way I can't stop Bahati from being a straight guy to turn to be a gay is the way he can't stop me, or he can't stop us from being gays. This is our life, and this is my life in particular. I really love it, and I'm really proud of it. I really feel comfortable with guys. I've never felt women. So how will you force me to feel something?
So we've set the scene there. David Bahati, like it or not, homosexuality is there in Africa. You cannot say it is un-African, can you?
It's un-African because it is inconsistent with African values of procreation, of a belief in a continuity of family and clan.
So the existence of homosexuals in Africa, you think, is compromising population growth in Africa? Is that what you're saying?
Certainly.
It is?
Yeah.
Can you give us a figure on that, Mr. Bahati?
No, I do not have to give you the figure because homosexuality is illegal in our country, and therefore there is no way we can capture this figure into our statistics.
Is it about 30 million people live in Uganda?
We have 33 million people living in Uganda.
33 million in Uganda, and you think that's not enough? You think your population's being compromised by the existence of homosexuals?
No, the key issue is it is inconsistent with our belief of continuity of family and clan.
All right.
That's key.
Festus Mohai, is homosexuality un-African?
No, because there are homosexuals in Africa as elsewhere. It does appear that homosexuality have always existed.
Paula, you have lived in several countries right across Africa. In your view, do you think that there is this kind of common position that homosexuality is either African or un-African?
I think it varies. I mean, but like Remo Hai said, it has always been with us, and ideological prejudice has also always been with us. So the question of whether it's African or not is really just a question of whether we want to cling to the ideological prejudice or whether we want to let people have the right to experience their own humanity. You know, you can't change human nature, but culture is about how you respond to it. So I would say homophobia is the un-African thing, because homophobia creates a culture of hatred, it creates a culture of intolerance, and that has no space in our continent.
Sadique, so homosexuality is African, it's homophobia that is un-African. From an African and Muslim perspective, what's your view?
Well, I think homosexuality is un-African, first of all, because even though it's something that is human nature, it's not something that we have promoted. It's not something that in Africa naturally is seen as something deviant. People have the natural instincts, yes, but over centuries, even though we have had homosexuals over the years, over the centuries, they've not come out. It's not something we're used to in the African continent. And so when people
So what are you saying? You're all right with homosexuals existing as long as they're quiet about it?
Yes, because I think it offends the sensibility of others around them.
Why does it affect the sensibilities of others?
Because it's something that's just recently now that they're starting to make it so public. Let me put it like that.
And then homophobia, Paula says that's the thing that is actually un-African. I mean, would you agree with that?
Well, I think nobody should attack anybody based on their natural instincts or whatever they feel like doing. As long as they're adults, they're consenting to it, people should leave others too.
And then, what about from a Muslim perspective? Because Nigeria has got around a dozen states that base their law on Sharia law, where if a man indulges in homosexuality, it is actually punishable by death. A lesbian would get 6 months in prison and 50 lashes. Well, but is that something you like? You like the idea of that?
Talking as a Muslim, homosexuality falls in the category of things that are forbidden, strictly. No, you know, it is not allowed. It is haram.
Yubi? I mean, I have to say to you that when Sadiqa says something like, actually, the majority of people's sensibilities are affronted when it comes to that very assertive gay agenda that we do see in Western countries, and it is that which is un-African. Fair point.
Not at all, Zainab. I mean, when I listen to David and also Sadiqa, what I hear is basically a tissue of irrational argument and hatred. And where does one even start? Let's start with David's point of view. This idea that African values is all about procreation and we're all a bunch of sex machines is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Okay? What does David have to say to a straight couple who's sterile, that they should feel less African because they can't give birth to kids? What about a gay couple that have decided, actually, I want to have a kid, but I want to continue living in a same-sex relationship the day after I've spawned one? Will you be more comfortable with that person? It's just a badly thought-through point of view. And the same with Sadiqa's. I mean, this idea of the 2 points that she's mentioned, firstly, that I get offended. Well, I get offended by homophobes. Does that mean that he must go into the closet, as it were? No. We all have a right to exist. The fact that you are aesthetically insulted by looking at two people who are in the same-sex relationships, who are holding hands in public, that's neither here nor there. Why should I be condoning your homophobia?
Sadiqa, are you offended by this gentleman here?
No,
but he's just told you he is a gay man working in gay activism, and he wants to be open about it. Well, are you offended by him?
No, I'm not. The display of their how do I put it in now? Well,
position.
The public display of, that's what I mean by
public display. Yes. Two men kissing in public, for instance. You don't like that?
Thing. One would ordinarily accept it from a straight couple.
Do you accept that, perhaps? I mean,
do you want
the right to kiss somebody, a male partner or boyfriend, in public?
Well, of course I do. I mean, it's a good start. That, you know, I'm not about to be lashed for what I'm doing if it was up to her. But the real question... The real question, Sadiqa, is this. Do you accept that the fact that you are offended in terms of your sensibilities, do you accept that there's no basis for public policy and for laws, that it's your own private viewpoint, and I respect your entitlement to have it, but you wouldn't co-sign your name to a bill by David? Do you accept that?
I won't co-sign my name to a bill like that.
All right, we'll develop that point later. Before I go to our audience, I just want to pick up the point. David, you said very clearly homosexuality is un-African because Africans want to go forth and multiply and have children, and you actually said that the existence of homosexuals in Africa compromises population growth. Is that what you said?
In the long run, and that's one reason. The other reason is we don't have to confuse 2 points. One, existence of something does not necessarily mean acceptance. It's an acceptance of homosexuality that makes it African, or the unacceptance of homosexuality that makes it an African. It's not the existence. There are so many things that have existed on the continent.
David,
the other thing,
2 points. That's
if I can make a
Firstly,
point.
you don't have a monopoly on what it means to be African. Not every single person on the continent shares that viewpoint. Okay?
I'll give you a chance to come back. Okay? Just a minute.
And secondly, but much more importantly, let's say for the sake of argument that the majority of Africans share your viewpoint. So what? The fact that the majority of people may be sexist and misogynist doesn't mean we need laws that reflect that. It means those attitudes are wrong and need to be engaged. The question of what is morally right or wrong is not a question of doing a head count and seeing what the majority of people think.
But this point about in the long run, populations are going to be compromised because of the existence of homosexuals.
Well, it's nonsense. I mean, from a statistical point of view, gay people are always going to be a statistical minority, so it's not a real problem. But at any rate, I mean, in the long run, we're all dead. The question is whether it's morally okay, whether it's morally okay for public policy to reflect that viewpoint.
No,
David Bahati, let him reply.
You'd be certainly entitled